This is a Coast Redwood. And we're on the Kitsap Peninsula, west of Seattle area. And we're at Seabeck Conference Center. And my understanding is that in the early 1970s, Seabeck staff had planted up here on the forest. The conference center's down there, kind of in the flats. Saltwater is just 100 yards from here. But this goes up slope, and my understanding is they had it reforested here, including planting of 1,000 or 1,100 redwood seedlings, Coast Redwood seedlings. This certainly would have been one of them. I was here 3 years ago surveying the area and got into this area just as it was getting dark at the end of the day, so I never did a thorough search. These are definitely the big ones and some offspring here. The smaller ones we'll go up there and we'll find later. But what I'd like to point out right here, we've got sword ferns. We are definitely in a kind of rainforest here. We'll see some big, really big leaf maples. Only 3 kinds of really canopy going trees here. Douglas-fir, of course, that's the dominant. We'll see some old ones. I really don't see many baby Douglas-firs here. We also have what's called western red cedar. That's genus Thuja. And when you see genus Thuja here, western red cedar, you know it's wet enough for Coast Redwood. Either rainfall is enough, seepage enough, or fog right here from the cold water of Puget Sound. So we're going to get started here. This is one of the old ones, and 1970s plantings. And Michael and I have found some cones, last year's cones. They drop this time of year. The cones open and shed seeds into the wind. So the last year's cones are dropping now. And we're going to start off a little bit in this direction here. There's a few trees, offspring of this, that I want to show. But then we're going to be going down there, because the ones that you see right there, the big trunks, those are redwoods too. So let's get started. We'll start right in here. This is right along the edge of the path here. This is our Coast Redwood. And I would say it's an offspring because it gets quite a bit of sun here compared to elsewhere in the forest, and yet it's only this big. So this seems to me that this would not have been planted in 1970s, but it would be offspring. And right off to this side here, take a look at, you can see a low branch here. They'll keep their branches going into the sun. There's a big opening here where they can get sun, and so you can see the characteristic leaves. And this is the Coast Redwood right here, going up. That's a huge, that's a huge old Douglas-fir right behind me there. Now we're going to turn, and that's another Douglas-fir right there. Now we're going to turn, and we're going to spend our time over here. We'll look for the big ones that would have been planted. My main thing is I'm really looking for the smaller saplings and the seedlings, because it's one thing to plant a tree from some other part of the country and have it survive. It's another thing to have it be able to reproduce and to have its seedlings disperse and establish. So we'll be filming the big guys, but we're mostly going to be looking for the small ones. Let's get started again. glorious, glorious one. And you can see what's fallen into the green branch here. It's called semi-deciduous. That this time of year, actually starting a month or so ago, last year's cones which opened, they're all brown, last year's cones which opened and dispersed seeds while they were still on high, the whole stem section is falling. And a good way to look for finding where the redwoods are if we don't see them is to look on the ground. I just picked up, you'll find these, they don't drop little leaves, they drop whole branchlets of the leaves and of course the cones. So this is huge. This would have been one of the 1970s plantings right here. And I can testify up here, tons of sun. Over here, it would get sun in the winter because take a look at, let's just step around here for a moment. Look at that gorgeous big leaf maple back right behind me here. What that means is that in the wintertime, once the leaves have dropped and in early spring, these evergreen redwoods are able to get full sun. And the climate is equable enough here in the Puget Sound areas, and will be getting increasingly so with climate change, that they don't shut down in the winter. They can keep photosynthesizing, these evergreen trees. So this, look at the beautiful, beautiful branches. It'll keep its branches down low if there's sun, and like I say, it's getting it here. But we've also got back here, and look at this gorgeous sword thing. We've also got a characteristic basal. Mm-hmm. If something were to happen to the main stem, this basal would then take off. So let's continue. Oh, in fact, right here, take a look at this. Here's a smaller one. There's another big one behind me. That would have been 1970s planting, but shadier, so it's not as big as the one I just showed. This one has got to be an offspring of them because it's quite small and yet looks very, very healthy. So let's keep looking around, see what we see. This is a Douglas-fir. Right there is a Douglas-fir, beautiful sword ferns. Redwood, here's a little redwood, and that's the big redwood that I just filmed, this set. Here's another redwood, straight back through here. This too would be offspring, right next to a big leaf maple. What's interesting is the mycorrhizae of all of the redwoods group, Cupressaceae, are the same kind as genus Acer, maple, big leaf maple, and the same kind as the sword ferns. So this whole forest probably is interconnected by the mycorrhizae running between all the roots, sharing sugars as needed. This is another redwood here. Let's keep walking over this way. Here's the smallest one I've seen thus far. This one's a little odd. It actually has two basals. It's either been fallen on by a fallen branch, maybe this one a while ago. Can't say for sure. But here's another one. This one's a little bigger than that, but in terms of heading for the canopy tree, this one is definitely offspring. I was just over there at that small little redwood there. Here's another one growing right here. Two big Douglas-fir behind me. Wow. big leaf maple over there. And Michael and I didn't find anything further on here, so we've just explored from up there. We're going to head back to the path now, and there's one very interesting little redwood that I want to show up there. Almost back to the path, but I have to stop here. Beautiful little redwood here. Another one right over there, red bark, about the same age. And also look back at the structure of this big western red cedar behind here with all of the branches coming out low. What's interesting about western red cedar is it doesn't lose its lower branches as it goes up to the canopy. Redwoods, Douglas-fir, they're heading for the very highest canopy, and they will drop their branches as they go up. But look at the wonderful rainforest we're in here. All this kind of moss hanging means that this is good redwood habitat. They shouldn't be stressed at all by drought. So the path's right up there. That's where a really interesting little one is I want to show. I noticed this first. You see it's off to an angle. This is a redwood, so I reach down, and it's coming out of an old branch or trunk that had fallen down. It's coming right out of there, and as I look back, these were coming out of something too that must have been pushed over by a fallen branch, and somebody has cut them off here. This one would have been about 1.5 inches across, but stem was cut. And the redwoods will keep coming back after their stems have been cut. This one was cut too, so there's a whole vibrancy here. And I have seen in California that if a branch falls, but it's still connected, that it will be regrowing from the ground up, new sprouts heading up. And then, if it lasts long enough, they can keep going. But this is the first instance of that I've found here. And certainly, whatever this is, you can see it's cut off here. This is about 3-inch diameter where it's been cut. This is the one out of which this is coming in all of these. So, classic redwood habit. And speaking of big one, I wonder if this branch came from there. Right over here, take a look at that beautiful bark. Wow. Now this bark is really interesting here because it's really stringy. It gets stringy as it gets old, but oftentimes it'll get covered with lichen. It looks to me that because this roadway is right here, a lot of the stems were cut off, and maybe that disrupted the bark formation. It's starting to get more of the grayish up there. But this is the typical stringy bark, and the kind of stuff that bark beetles cannot get through and get into. They have to go up into the branches that don't have bark like this, much thinner bark. And then if they're going to penetrate a drought-stressed tree, they'll be doing it up in the branches, not in the main stem. Okay, so we've just finished this first area. We're going to wander on, and I'm not going to be stopping to show all the redwoods, but if I get to any other ones that look like it was, planted in the 1970s, I'll stop there to mark it. But what we're really going to be looking for are the offspring and any cones. And we have seen the old drop cones here. I haven't been able to look up high enough to see if there's any green cones from this year, but Michael and I will be looking for that. So let's continue exploring. We just came from down there. That's a big old redwood on the left there. We're walking up the hill to get to a section where 3 years ago, I know there's some young ones, But I just had to stop here because here's the characteristic branches, leaf structure of a redwood here. And this one is definitely headed for the canopy. It's smack dab in the center there. That's a big light bark colored Douglas-fir behind it. But look how straight that is. That's a redwood. Got its start right here in this cluster of sword ferns. Let's take a look at the base, how it got started in here. So it's a bit of a hummock on there. Don't know what that means, but it's amidst all these sword ferns. Just pausing here a little bit upslope to show the distinctions. There's Douglas-fir here, but right in the center of the picture here, this is a young Douglas-fir. See that? Tops of it. It's right in the center of the picture, heading up. And there's another one right there, center of the picture. So the climate here, the suitability, still very much for Douglas-fir. We've just walked up that trail from the right, and you see right in the center of the picture there's a stump there that was a western red cedar that's just been cut down, and there's a lot of boughs and branches down in that area. But where I'm standing here is where 3 years ago I started finding some young redwoods, and at the time I couldn't tell the difference between Pacific yew and redwood. Well, there are 4 here, and all 4 of them testing the leaves here, showing that if I peel back, pull off one of these little leaflets, a bit of the green threadiness comes with it. Pacific yew, no, it comes right off on a little petiole type stem. I was just taking a picture of a big Douglas-fir there and a big leaf maple, and it came from a little redwood seedling there. And I noticed overhead something that looked like a redwood leaf structure. So I came here, and this bark is unmistakable. This is a Pacific yew. This is not a redwood. This is native here. But you can see it's the same leaf structure. And the way that I can tell is that when you take and rip off one of these little tiny leaflets here, it comes just with its tiny little stem, whereas if you do that to the redwood, it rolls back the green bark away, and you get a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of bark on there. So this is definitive, and you can see it's starting to turn that purple color rather than the orangey red that a redwood has. So this is fabulous. We have got ourselves a Pacific yew, subcanopy tree, native here, growing underneath the Douglas-firs. Pacific yew would grow at an angle and usually be multi-stemmed. Redwoods just don't do that, so I don't know how this one got started or what it was challenged by, but you can see right up there, it's heading straight up from that point. What's interesting about this one is at first you thought, my God, was it a basal of a larger tree? Look at this one down. But no, I dug back into it here. And here's the base right here. So this was a redwood that found its way right next to, this probably was a Douglas-fir that had been chopped down. A lot of sword fern in here. Here's a little redwood right in front. You can see the beautiful leaf structure here. And it's coming right out of the ground from in front of, probably there's a young red cedar coming up alongside, but from another base area. And there you can kind of see at the top. But it's very lush here, heading straight up for the canopy, in part because, let me take a look up here, we actually have a lot of sun in here. This is looking towards the water side, and you can see, even though it's pretty evergreen, now, right over here, oh, when these leaves come down, that's a big leaf maple. We'll have a lot of sun coming in. But here's that first little one that I showed that's leaning off to the side here. We've got another one. Oh, let's see. Another one here that I just showed. There's towards the top of it. There's a bigger one. This one is so characteristic. Look at the red of that stem back there. And it's huge. It's absolutely huge where it's going up to. Right in the center of the picture. Heading way up. Can't see it from here. And let me see if there's anything else here. Michael's down there by, there's big Douglas-fir there. I thought I saw another, oh yeah. Back there, I'll just hone in on the branches there, a little Douglas-fir in front. But look at how distinctive those leaflets are. Coast Redwood, here in the state of Washington. One more thing, I just showed a close-up of these branches here, but as I'm walking down to get back to the path, I noticed, look at this much yellower green. This is a western hemlock. Also has a tendency to have more flat-lying little leaflets on it than the Douglas-fir have, but not as flat as the redwoods have, and they are rounded. They don't have that soft little needle, tiny little pinhead coming out. I just came from all that sword fern, open, very light area. Here you can see where they had cut from that stump and piled up some of the branches. Just walking even just this distance, just to get back to the path. Here's another little redwood. Right here, and you can see what's interesting here is I'm starting to notice that where they grow, for some reason, they don't want to be right straight on the ground. This one is growing a little bit out of the top of a rooted area. So it's got some elevation to it, doesn't get too boggy in there, of this really large Douglas-fir here. And here's the redwood branch, but you see it curving out to get sun and then heading up from here. It's not a Pacific yew. I've tested it. It's a redwood. And then as I look around, I see several more. Here's another one in here. Starting, in fact, I'm going to go take a look at the base, because in California they all seem to come up pretty much straight up. But look at this. And then it found some sun and it's heading straight up there. But, oh, and here's right in front of that big Douglas-fir back there, with all the greenery coming out. Here's one of the ones I already showed from that other point. But let's take a look. Let's take a look at what the base looks like there, because I'm starting to find that they may need some elevation to start growing on. And then, of course, I'll take a look at that red stem there. That's another one, really heading up towards the canopy there. And then it looks like beyond there to the right, I'll see that may be another one, but we're just full of redwoods here. But for now, let's go take a look at where this one is growing out of. Okay, this stem right in the center. This is a little redwood I was looking at while standing over by that big Douglas-fir on the left. And this means that I'm going to need to find out some history. To me, this is really obviously a basal. And you can see another basal here, right here, trending up, okay, straight up. But to me, this looks like a basal coming out of this stump. So I am going to guess that this stump was one of the redwoods planted in the 70s, and they decided to come in here and lumber it for some reason. And then this basal came out, and then more recently, this basal. But that's the best that I can think of. It's possible that that other one over there that I saw where it was coming out of, maybe that was a redwood stump too. But these very certainly are redwoods. This is very interesting. I just walked up slope a bit to check out this fallen tree here, and you can see it's been cut. It was quite a tall tree. There's another end of it, and I went right up to the far, far end up there, and I could see that the dead leaves on it. This is a western red cedar that died. What's interesting, first of all, look at how thin that bark is. See the bark coming out there? I'll show it closer up. But what struck me is all the bark beetles. And now it's a question in whether the bark beetles attacked and killed it, and that's why it came down, or whether it was cut for some other reason, and then the bark beetles attacked it that immediately before the cambium layer would have died. So here I'm just kind of showing some of the vestiges of bark beetles that we have here. Some people can identify them from the kind of tunnels they make. Here's the opposite side, the bark that fell off from that, but you can see how thin this is. This is not a redwood. And of course I did confirm that it was these kind of western red cedar. Here's some more bark hanging here. And some more. What beautiful designs. Look at that. It's like an abstract painting. Move along here. This is the part I first saw in here. And then over into here. Let's get a bit of a close-up in here. And then down here is the equivalent on the underside of the fallen off bark. And aha, this was not cut. This fell, and it fell in a good direction. It did not fall over the path. So my assumption, I don't know, I can't tell. Was this stressed and the bark beetles got it and then it died and then it fell? Or did a wind just push it over and then the bark beetles got into it? It goes for quite a ways up there. All right. Turning around back here, right in the center, curving up there. That's a young redwood we've already looked at. One that had a basal there and that I posited might have been previously had a lumber operation going on it. Whoa, we got another one right here. That's another redwood heading up to the sky. It'll have no problem getting up there. Plenty of room. Over there, that looks like a little hemlock, and here, of course, we have a Douglas-fir. So let's continue. Okay, we've just come to a junction. Two paths here. The one up there is the one we were just walking on. I've come through there. You can see some sword ferns, big sword fern patch in the background. That's the area I was just filming in. Right behind me is another one. We haven't been on this path yet, but this leads right back down to the conference center and the parking area. And Michael, who's filming right now, is going to depart. So I'm going to continue walking. I see another redwood right there. Got one right here. And just documenting what I can find up there. And again, what I'd really like to find is where they have a tendency to grow. I'm starting to think maybe they need a hummock to be on in order to not be so boggy that the seed actually can grow. But I'm going to keep going, but you're not going to see me much anymore because Michael's going to be gone at this point. So I'll continue on my own. I was right down there at the junction of these two trails and then started continuing on that one there, and look at all this incredible lush redwood growth here. But this one is doing some strange things. First of all, the way it's growing, two basals type structures, not a seedling type structure coming out of there. And look at this. Something fell and pushed over this branch that's still full of life here. But it's putting up direct stems up out of there. I don't have that much experience with young redwoods, a lot with older ones. In California, you hardly ever see any young ones. But redwoods don't normally do that. Now, the other thing that's interesting, so it looks like something fell on them a while ago, so long ago that it's, you know, you've got pretty thick verticals coming up at this point. But I'm starting to get suspicious that old log stump there used to be a redwood, and that when it was logged, these basals came out of it. Very difficult to tell. But I have tested the leaflets on here. It's definitely not a Pacific yew. A Pacific yew is very capable of growing in all directions and doing just fine if things land on it. But this is a redwood. And you can see a stem coming straight out at the top going up, but it doesn't have the support directly under it to be able to do that. So I don't know what it's planning on doing, but this is very strange to me. I'll now go to the upper side there because you can see a couple of new basals coming out. Let's go take a look. So here's the other side, the uphill side, and you can see the two basals coming out, both at angles, but then these much redder, directly heading up stems right here. 3 of them, all heading up, and then there's another one heading up, but right from here, and you can see its top, something happened to its top in here, got smashed off, something on it, but continuing to grow. A lot of sun here. I'd grow too I'd find a way. You just find a way when you get a good spot like this. So I'll have to find out what happened to it. Now there's another redwood right there. That looks like a hemlock right behind it. And that yellow that you can see down at the bottom there, that was that fallen thujet trunk, western red cedar, that had the bark beetles on it. And right directly in the center, that's a redwood. Directly in the center, that's growing up. One more thing before I head down. This is this strange redwood area. I am standing in the midst of sword ferns that are about up to my shoulder. When you see sword ferns that are growing this well, you know you are in a rainforest type situation. Wow, now that's interesting. There's a log there, looked long ago. Probably huckleberries coming out of the top of it. Here's another thuja over there, and the trail is down there. So we shall continue. But sword ferns all around me. Look at who we have here, right next to that mushroom that a squirrel probably harvested. A slug. Now, down in California, anywhere you're in the redwoods, what you're going to see are big yellow banana slugs. None of those up here. I wonder if they'll make their way north too. Now I'm on the opposite side of the path. Same path. I was back up there somewhere recently. You can see the path kind of center low there. So just the brown area. And I walked back here because I saw a redwood, and when you see one redwood, you're likely to see some more. So right here, a redwood with its basal coming out, heading up toward the canopy. Over here, here's another redwood coming up, and it has two basals, very healthy, coming out up there. And it's heading up. And then this one is huge. Look at that red bark. This one, it's got a couple little basals over on this side too. But you can see it. Here's one of its branches right here sticking out. But that is heading up, up. It's got big leaf maple above it, but boy, it's got a ways to go to get up to those really tall Dougies. See, that's a Dougie right to the right of it there. That gray fluted bark. What's interesting is back in there, a number of western red cedar little babies, thujas. One has its branch sticking out this far, but I saw one, it just died. It just didn't have enough sunlight coming through. And yet the redwoods here are making it. And then there's one more redwood here, right in the center there, that red trunk. Look how straight that is, and losing a lot of its lower branches and just heading up into the big leaf maples up there. Okay, I was just talking about this redwood here, and then that red bark there, and I just went past this tree and started looking around. Oh my, right in the center of the picture, dark red bark there, heading straight up, a very, very beautiful redwood. And look at all that open spaces it has up there. There is a Dougie or two up there, but mostly big leaf maple. And as I look around, gosh, there's another one. Let's see if I can show it. Yeah, right in the center there, its stem right in front of that Dougie. In the center there. Oh yeah, and here you can see its base down there. And as I keep turning around, here's a two-stemmer right in the center of the picture there, heading up. A two-stemmer, Coast Redwood. Lots of polysticium ferns here, sword ferns, and there's another one over there. Oh, I'll keep looking. Taking a closer look at the two that I just pointed out, I just walked over. And this one, again, it's looking at the bases. I think a lot can be learned here as to whether these are seedlings or basals. What we've got right next to Again, this one heading up. We got an old, so long ago log that its center is hollowed. Here's another one right next to it that's been cut off, something cut off, but there's no redwood coming up right next to it there. But there is here. I was just back up in there. I decided to come and take a look at the base of that second one that I was seeing at a distance. And then I saw something, red trunk. Look at this, so diagnostic. Red trunk. Now this is too young, way too young, to have been planted in the 70s, but I'm starting to get even more suspicious that logging happened here, because even though this comes straight out of the ground, what's next to it is an old rotting stump. And what's interesting in this rotting stump is what's coming out of it is often the kind of stuff that down in California, I wish I knew what this was. I don't know if it's a boxwood, but this and huckleberries are the two things you can see coming out of those massive old logging stumps. They like to grow on top of redwoods. And so that's what we have here. We have that growing out. And again, here's the old stump. Here's a huckleberry. Look at that. Here's a redwood basal coming out from right down in that area there. And then here's the main gorgeous stem. And this one's easy to find because maybe the reason this one has so much, it's so big, is that it's right next to the outdoor chapel area. This had been, still is, a Christian conference center, but other denominations use it too. And oh my gosh, look at what I see. Here's the one I was looking at. There's the stem at the bottom. Look at the full sun it gets. It is heading up because it's got full sun right here by these benches. But then there's another one right there in the center. That's another redwood heading up. Full sun. This would be really easy for people to find and study redwoods right here. I'm going to take a look at the base of that one and see if it looks like it came out of something that was logged. So here is the base of that one. And it looks like something might have been logged here. All of these stems with moss on them, these are huckleberries. There, you can see some huckleberry leaves right in the center foreground there. But this is what the base looks like. And I don't see any basals coming up around it. We've just looked at a couple redwoods right along the edge back there. And as I explore, that's a western red cedar here, thuja, young one. But right here, right in the center there, nothing strange about its base, a few little basals coming up. This is another redwood. And this one too is just full sun, working in full sun, heading up. And this one is really easy to find because you just come to the pulpit here. And there's the cross. Here's the pulpit. Here's the holy redwood. Another view of the pulpit. Checking back in this area here, we've got a little redwood right here. Beautiful little redwood. You've got a lot of ferns. Look at these gorgeous ferns. Another little redwood straight in the center back there, heading up to about the top there. Right here, quite a redwood right in front. Look at that. Look at that bark. Heading up here. Actually spreading out more than I'm used to. Look at the branches spreading way out because it can. Not as tall as one might expect, but it's really stretching out. And there to its right, leaning out, is another redwood. I'll take a look at all the bases. So here's that really big, beautiful redwood, at least coming straight out of the ground. And I looked at that sawed-off log there. It had tipped over. That looks like it had been a Douglas-fir. Here is one of the redwoods I already pointed out, kind of leaning, heading up underneath the outstretched arms of this other redwood, straight up here. But what I find fascinating, I hadn't seen from my other spot there are two young ones here. Now this one, look at this. This is strange. Probably had something fall on it, but I've been kind of digging it out a little bit, and you can see it comes from pretty much right in the same spot where this other one comes from. And this is a more standard issue redwood. And in fact, this is interesting. Here we get a chance to actually see when the red color comes in. Red down in here, and then there's a growth spurt right in the center there that's still green, and another one that's still green. So two growth spurts green. Here it is October 18, 2019, and then growth spurts below that are red. So I'm not sure whether this was a branch or something in here, why it looks quite like this. Wait, what's this? Nope, that's just something. So again, really important to look at the bases of these redwoods to try to distinguish whether they're regrowth or whether they're actually seedlings, and who's old enough here to make seedlings. Oh, here's another really beautiful view of one of the redwoods I already pointed out. And back in that open space, that's the outdoor chapel area. This very clearly from the bark is an old Douglas-fir logging that's already hollowed through. A thuja alongside it here. Look at all these ferns. And I found another redwood here. This one is I'm just not used to this growth form. Again, now I've checked it to make sure that this is not a Pacific yew. Okay, this is a redwood. But point this out here. There is a root type structure going right into here, and yet this whole area back here is stretching here, and every single one of these stems coming up from here is a redwood stem. As I step back, you can see how that's just clearly a whole bunch of redwoods coming up from there. So, and here's another one right above me here. So I don't know. And then see, coming up straight from that stem, some of the ones coming up. Redwoods don't normally try to do that. And then this one curving over. This is more the structure of a basal coming up from somewhere. So I don't know what the situation is here, but this really ought to be studied. This really ought to be studied. And then as I look in this direction here, that's another redwood right in the center. You can see some more stumps back here, and I'm going to keep searching around. I'm well off the path now, well away from the outdoor pulpit area. There's a building right down there, and there's another building with some cars over there. So I'm sure there's a path over in that area. But I'm just going to keep, gosh, I'm just going to keep walking around. I'll take a look at the base of this one and see what else I come to. Here's another view of that redwood stretching off to the side there with a lot of basals and coming out horizontally to the right where I couldn't discern clearly what was going on. Now I've just walked a short distance. We have another redwood here. You might think that it's an ordinary base that it's coming out of, but as it turns out, when I probed this area with my stick over in here, that's an old rotting stump. And on the other side of that, I don't know if that's a big leaf maple. It's certainly not a redwood. So at minimum, this was an uplifted area. It was not as low as the surroundings. So there was a little bit of a height here. And I just don't know what this is. It's redwood, but I don't know its provenance. I don't know if it started from a seed or if there was a 1970s redwood in there that was cut and then this came back. I just don't know. Back here still, I turned around and so I saw another redwood, so I'm going to point out where that is. First, here's a western red cedar here. Characteristic, those low branches curving up and over. But right there, right in the center, is another redwood with another basal coming out on the left. And this one stretches quite high up. I can't see through it here. Here's the one with its basal. I was just looking at it at a distance, but I thought I'd stop here because I've been noticing this as I've touched the trees. Once they get up about this size, when you press in, you got a good 1/4 inch of just soft, you're pressing in a sponginess here, in addition to it getting thready, that you just don't have on the western red cedar. Now on this smallness, as I press in, I don't get anything. But again, this is definitely a redwood here. Cathedral in the woods. I was just over in that area and came out, crossed a little trail in here. This was the building that I had pointed out back in there. But I just decided to keep exploring, seeing what I could find. And lo and behold, here's a redwood right here. Look at that glorious red color right here. This one is going quite a ways up. It's got some Douglas-fir and some western red cedar to contend with. This one's very easy to find. First of all, you see there's some kind of a walkway over there. And there's a little path in through here and a very big Douglas-fir in the center here. So I'm just going to keep exploring a little here, and I'll take a look at the base of that. All right, from a different angle, that dark red stem in the center was what I was just looking at. There you can see the red of it. Nothing strange about the basal, but it has grown up. It's kind of a bit on and elevated all around it, but I did not detect any vestige of a stump. Then walking around, here's one right here. Another redwood, a small one. Look how straight that is, heading up. We've got a Douglas-fir stump here. We've got another redwood there with a pink ribbon on it, heading up. And another one right there, heading up. Here are the bases of the two little ones I just showed. Nothing remarkable about either one. The only thing that I find somewhat remarkable is there are no basals coming up from them, no additional sprouts. So again, the way you find it, here's a giant Douglas-fir. There's that wood walkway. I'll take a walk over there and see if there's anything else there. And here's a beautiful view of the lovely branchlets of a coast redwood. I just came from back there, walked on this walkway here. Beautiful western red cedars there. Right below me, coast redwood. Here is a stem of a young Douglas-fir right in front of me here. Center, young Douglas-fir, but behind that, Coast Redwood stem there. There you can see up its leaflet starting in. Let's see, oh gosh, yeah, there's another one right in the center of the picture there, looking over. Coast Redwood. I just walked over to the other side, got another little redwood growing up right alongside the walkway here. And as I walk forward, we've got another one right off here at the end. Looks like just a very normal base to it. A lot of sunlight for it to grow here. Out at the end of the walkway here, I already photographed these from another side, but this is the sunny side. Look at the beautiful branchlets on both of these Coast Redwoods. This was still pretty short, and this one over here is happy to head upward. So now I'm going to walk back out and keep exploring, because off on this side, oh, this is a good place. Look at, there you can see the salt water. So presumably this area gets fog. This is a Coast Redwood, and this is a little, I would still call it a seedling. It's not even a sapling yet. But where it comes out of the ground, it looks totally normal. So I would imagine this came from seed. And then as I flip around here, there's a number of young western red cedars. But as I flip through here, look at these characteristic branchlets right there. And there's the trunk that they belong to. Heading up, Coast Redwood. Here's a landmark, really easy to see. Look how deep this erosional channel is. This is absolutely amazing. I have no idea how it got like this or where it comes from, but it's a good landmark for being able to see this. Here's a Coast Redwood. This one is quite large. Heads up. I was just over in that area over there, and again, I've just been sort of wandering around. But I bet this one right there, that's a Coast Redwood. And I bet that one may be big enough to have been planted in the 70s. This is really quite large. Really wonderful stringy bark. There's another one smaller right back there, very red. I'm going to look around and see if I see any cones dropped off it. Because then that would give us a clue that oh gosh, there's another one. Look at that. I've gotten to the point where I can just diagnostic see the branches. So there's a young one back there somewhere too. Somebody's spawning babies here. And it may just well be this one right here. Here's the base. Here's what it looks like. And I'm going to check the ground for cones. You can see a lot of the shed branchlets here. I see a lot of Douglas-fir cones, but let me see. I'll shut the camera off and then go back on. Let me see if I can see any shed cones at all. Another baby redwood. You can see it kind of came out at an angle there, but pretty much flat ground in there, not a hummock or anything. Back at the base of this, because look at what I almost missed right off to the left. this is the last thing I was hoping to see. I felt around the base. This is the babiest seedling I have seen here. There, you can see the base there. Comes right out of there. And it looks to me like it's about 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 growth seasons. But that is the youngest I see. And even though I don't find cones, seeds can fly a long distance. So something seeded that. And more recently, something seeded this. Ah, baby redwood, may the forest be with you.